Yo, what's going on YouTube? It's Lore Master. We're back at it with another Star Trek Strange New World. This time it's episode 5. So let's get into it. Starting out with episode 5. To me, I feel like this is just a weaker episode, but that's because of the way it's laid out. This episode is focused mainly on interactions with the crew and building the relationship with the crew. So we don't go anywhere. We stay on the ship this entire episode. They're So what happens is they're from the last episode where they had the battle with the Gorn. They gotta refix their ship. So they go to a starbase and they're just hanging out at a starbase, and another species comes on and they're trying to in negotiations to get into the Federation. They've already had talks with the Klingons and Romulans, so the Federation are like, we need to secure these people and get them in the Federation so we don't lose that species. And I guess, go back to the beginning. That's kind of the general plot of it. It starts out with Spock. He's having a nightmare. He's like conflicted between his human half and his Vulcan half. So in his nightmare, he's like battling like a human side and like a Vulcan side of him. And it's kind of cool because they play the classic like TOS like combat music like when he's doing it. So it's just kind of like a neat little Easter egg there for fans. And then later on, getting back into it with the negotiations, Spock and his fiance comes on board because they want to like since it's shore leave and they're fixing the ship. They want to. She comes on board and they're like, "Hey, we can spend some time together." But since there's negotiations, Spock can't spend time with her, so they're struggling with the relationship. And they decide to do some kind of like soul bonding, I think is what they call it, some kind of like Vulcan ritual. And what happens is Spock's mind ends up in her body, and her mind ends up in Spock's body. So they kind of like switch bodies pretty much. And so now Spock's fiance T'Pring, I believe is her name, has to do negotiations for Spock in his body, but it's her mind, and he has to do like she was like arresting somebody or something like that. I don't know. She was doing something weird, but Spock has to like take over her responsibilities, and they kind of don't want people to know about it. So that's kind of the whole Spock story. There is they just kind of switch bodies, and they're like become closer because they're like, oh, I've experienced what you do, and you've experienced what I do. So that kind of the whole plot line wraps up with just like Spock and her like getting closer together. This episode has like a lot of different plot points. There's like I think like 3 different storylines that kind of take place over it. The other storyline is number 1, and was it Noonien Singh or whatever her name is, the tactical officer. They are just like they don't want to take shore leave because they're like boring officers or whatever is what the lower deck crew says about them, is they're boring. So they kind of just like go on a journey and like do this game called Enterprise Bingo that they caught other crewmen doing, where they just kind of break the rules on the ship. So they go on a journey around the ship, just breaking rules to have fun or whatever. That's pretty much it with that whole plot point. It was all right, but it's just them getting closer, the chemistry building between the crew. That's kind of the whole plot of this episode, is just that. Then we go back to the negotiations. They're like having trouble with negotiations. The alien race, they think, is replicating their behavior. So Pike notices that like when they talk to humans, they're more open and like respectful, and when they talk to Vulcans, they are very logical in their discussions. And when they show like a video of them talking to Tellarites, and they're really rude to each other. So Captain Pike notices that the alien species is like mocking or like taking on the behavior of the people they're negotiating with to join the Federation. So by the end of it, Captain Pike's like, I'm going to try something different. I'm going to try to mimic them. And that's they like that because they're like, oh, someone's actually taking our point of view into the discussion. So they're like, okay, we'll join the Federation. It was a weird species, but I kind of like that part of it. Again, this is just an episode that's about building connections with the crew. Along with that, Nurse Chapel and Ortigas is I think her name, the helmsman. They were off on the space station, starbase, just kind of hanging out, and Nurse Chapel helps T'Pring and Spock's body, or Spock and T'Pring's body, his fiance. She helps her do her little mission, and then they kind of like figure out a way to switch their minds back because they're stuck in each other's bodies. Overall, this episode is just kind of okay. It's just kind of all over the place. Probably the weaker episode for me, but it doesn't mean it's bad. It's just that this, again, it's just building characters, relationships, and that's kind of what this episode is about. So hopefully next episode we'll get a little more action, maybe, and it's not just focused on building relationships. But overall, it's okay episode, not the best for me. So I plan on doing a Obi-Wan review when the season ends, just because it's 6 episodes and it's short. So I'll just wait for the whole season to end before I wrap that up. I'll probably be dropping an Orville video soon, and yeah, and then we got Xbox E3. I might do something about with that next week. So just stay tuned.